Okay, well, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first Gallery Lectures series event for the fall 2019 semester. My name is Sarah Goodwin-Thiel, and I am the coordinator of the Haricombe Gallery Exhibition and Events Program. The Gallery Lecture Series is scheduled each semester in conjunction with the Haricombe Gallery Exhibition. Our current exhibit is called Strong Foundations, 100 Years of Hispanism at the University of Kansas. This is in celebration of the anniversary of the 100th anniversary of the Department of Spanish and Portuguese, as well as their many campus partners. The lecture series events are developed to showcase the rich collections, interdisciplinary scholarship, and creative work found at KU, and the vast resources which support this research. This morning, we're particularly pleased to welcome Dr. Luciano Tosta, Associate Professor of Brazilian Literature and Culture in the Department of Spanish and Portuguese. Dr. Tosta will discuss capoeira, the Afro-Brazilian expression of art, culture, and resistance, and its connection to globalization. Members of the KU Capoeira Club are here with us, and they will follow the discussion with a demonstration. Luciano Tosta has a PhD in comparative literature and master's degrees in comparative literature in Portuguese and Brazilian studies from Brown University. He was awarded the University of Kansas Department of Spanish and Portuguese 2016-2017 Jessie Marie Kramer and Ann Kramer Root Faculty Award in recognition of meritorious teaching and research. In Brazil, he taught at the federal and state Universities of Bahia. His book, Confluence Narratives, Ethnicity, History, and Nation-Making in the Americas, won the 2016 Vice Chancellor for Research Book Publication Award at the University of Kansas. The KU Capoeira Club is an organization led by students and faculty that is committed to the spread of capoeira as a cultural form, offering the opportunity of immersing their bodies in a system of physical discipline and movement, led by the captivating music of an array of African musical instruments. Please help me welcome our presenters, Dr. Tosta and the KU Capoeira Club.
Thank you. That's not usually my lecture gear, so it's kind of refreshing. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, the KU Capoeira Club, for being here. We are actually going to start with a demonstration, a roda, which is the ring or the circle where capoeira is usually played. And after that, I'll start the lecture itself. Okay. Stacy. Out of shape. Thank you, KU Capoeira Club. It's not easy to bring people at this time of the day. So we have faculty, students, undergrad, grad students, members of the community in the club. The club started 2 years ago? 3 years ago. Camila here, who just graduated from KU, was one of the founders. And nowadays, Farofa and Garça, we use nicknames in capoeira that's connected to the legacy of slavery in Brazil. And they are leading classes for us. So thank you everyone again. So I'm originally from Salvador, Bahia, the first capital of Brazil, actually the first capital of the colony in Brazil. And Salvador is the city in Brazil with the largest African heritage. Since the colonial times, Salvador has been famous for the elements of African culture that have survived, transformed, and out of something really bad that was slavery, we have a beautiful, flourishing culture. I'm interested in capoeira because when I was 7, my dad took me to a capoeira class. So about 20 years ago, my dad took me to a capoeira class because he thought it would toughen me up. You know, I was a shy kid. I stayed a year, I think, and since then, every 10 years I go back and I start doing it. I never leave it. Here in the US, I actually ended up getting more involved with it. My city is considered now one of the cradles of capoeira, and if you nowadays we have it all over the world. And I'm right now co-editing a book with a colleague from the University of Georgia on Capoeira and Globalization, and the book is under consideration by University of Cambridge Press. So this is not exactly my research about capoeira, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this process of globalization. Okay, this is a quote from Merle's book. It's very hard to define capoeira. Nowadays we call it an art form, an art expression. A lot of people call it a game. For many people it is actually a martial art. For others it is a philosophy. For others it is a dance. So it varies a lot depending on what you want from it and the leadership that you have in capoeira, in a capoeira class. Camila, can you come here? So there are dance movements like so we walk together like this. So of course what I want to do is to trick her into falling. Thank you. So a lot of acrobatics, but for some people it's really hardcore martial art. Although we say the capoeira doesn't really hit you. It went from a full contact expression to a no contact. So now the beauty is to show that I could make you fall. I could hit you instead of hitting you. Okay? So if I wanted, I would have made her fall, but I don't have to do that. But once I do that, the crowd, yeah, because everybody knows what that means, right? So there is a big ethics with capoeira right now, and I hope this works. When we say it is a dance, and we've seen some of us dancing, but this video I love. It shows. Back. We should go there. It's okay, it's okay. Maybe I can find. What? PowerPoint. So it's so close, but yet. And this style, it's more like Angola. For me, it's my favorite. Farofa Rolito here does those flips pretty well. So, to talk about capoeira, we have to talk about slavery in Brazil. No one really knows the number of slaves, but we know that it was the longest and largest slavery in the Americas. In sources that I've read, the number goes between 4.5 to 13 million enslaved peoples. And about 40% are supposed to have died on the way to Brazil, which the Americas. The official slave trade begins in 1559, but the records indicate that 1533 there's already slavery going on. It starts at the Portuguese colonies, and the major ports were the cities of Salvador, Recife, Rio de Janeiro, São Luís, and Maranhão, which are the cities in which the African heritage is mostly seen in Brazil nowadays. There were two large ethnic groups, the Sudanese and the Bantus. Usually when we think of capoeira, we think of the Bantu heritage. Although Africans came from every part, and capoeira shows that mixture of cultures. There were different cycles of slave import into Bahia. Okay. In the 16th century, slaves were used in the sugarcane production. In the 18th century, in the gold mines. There were different kinds of enslaved peoples. Some worked at the master's house, had some privileges. What we call escravos do eito worked on plantations or the mines. There were escravos de ganho that they worked for the owner out in the city, and that also included prostitutes. That was kind of common at the time. Many of the house domestic slaves, they were what we call amas de leite. I don't know the translation in English. They would breastfeed
Wet nurse.
wet nurse. So they would breastfeed the children of the masters. And some people, even nowadays, they say because of that, everybody in Brazil has some sort of African culture or element because of that transmission through the breastfeeding process. Slavery, of course, was really bad. In Brazil, we usually say that everything that happened in Brazil was not as bad as it was in other places. So the dictatorship, from 64 to 85, we say, oh, it wasn't as bad as it was in Chile or in Argentina. The same thing with slavery. We say it wasn't as bad as in the US, okay, but it was pretty bad. The Capitão do Mato, the bush captain, this is how to translate, was usually, quite often, a free enslaved person who was a slave catcher. And many times that person was a capoeirista, also was a capoeira practitioner. One myth about the slavery's feijoada, the dish, some people say that it used to be the leftovers from the food of the master's house. But some historians I've talked to, they think that that wouldn't be the case because meat was so expensive that even leftovers wouldn't be given to the enslaved peoples. The slaves' quarters, pretty bad condition. Usually they were located very near the master's house. And of course, there was resistance. Resistance came in different ways, and capoeira was one of them, right? So the Africans, they put together a variety of traditions from their nations, from their tribes, games, war, combat games, fights, and they made it into something that they could use when they escaped. Okay? In the quilombos, the maroon societies, capoeira supposedly thrived there. Zumbi do Palmares, a famous warrior from the Palmares quilombo, supposedly was a very fearful and feared capoeiristas. Many capoeira songs talk about him bringing his history alive again. Like everything in Brazil, politically, the abolition was something that happened little by little. First, the free womb law in 1871, the children of enslaved peoples were born free. In 1885, if a slave reached 60 years old, they would get free. And of course, the majority did not reach 60. And then in 88, the Lei Áurea, then supposedly we have slavery. Most Afro-Brazilians nowadays still say that we still have slavery still exists in the country in different forms. I will skip that. The word capoeira, there are several versions of it, but one common accepted version that it means area of low vegetation. Cará means mato in Tupi, Portuguese grass. And poeira means there used to be grass, so the place where there was grass and was cut. But there are other versions, including like a kind of a cesta box they used to carry things. The practice came from initially imitation of animals' movements, so we do things like this. And then after that, there is always a trick in the middle. But as I said, the competitions, the African games, and we used to think that capoeira was the only Afro practice in the diaspora that include a martial art that included music, and we learned later that that's not true. There are others that include music as well. Nowadays, the Ngolo is the one that most people think is probably one of the parents of capoeira, but some historians think it is more like a cousin, same kind of diasporic history. So there's a description of Ngolo, it's called the zebra dance. Okay? And if you see the description, there are similarities with capoeira. And you don't have to read. This was in 2009, a capoeira encounter I participated in Brazil with Mestre Jogo de Dentro, and they bring the zebra from the idea of Ngolo, so this past, African past, it's all relived nowadays in the songs and in the images that capoeira appropriates. This is another Omudinho. Usually scholars don't think it is one of the origins, but probably something like capoeira. But capoeira has developed in a much more structured way than any of these. When you find them, they're not. Capoeira became commercialized. You know, they haven't had the same kind of spread as capoeira has had. From the beginning, explorers in Brazil tried to register. This one clearly is about capoeira because the painting is called Jogo de Capoeira or War Dance. Gugendas, he did it in 1825. So there is no doubt that this is about capoeira. But we see there is no. Oh, there is a drum. So the drum was the first instrument we know that now in capoeira, not the berimbau. This one that nowadays is the most important. The berimbaus were used in Africa by salespeople to attract their prospective clients, and we have created it in a different way in Brazil. We use it in a different way. There are several kinds of berimbaus as well. So this one, Negros Brigando nos Brasis, blacks fighting in Brazil. We want to say it's capoeira, but it really looks like a benção, but one capoeira movement, but we don't know for sure it is capoeira or not, but we have incorporated that image into the capoeira world. The same thing here, you know, we think it's capoeira, but we are not 100% sure it is capoeira. And if you see those images, women are always sitting down, watching. I would say that nowadays women are probably, the majority of capoeira practitioners are actually women. But that took a long time, and that's more true outside of Brazil than in Brazil as well. I don't know if that's gonna work, I can try. This is a song by Mestre Tony Vargas. And of course it isn't working. Oh, surprise, surprise. So the song is a contemporary song, probably maybe 10 years old or so, but it is talking about the slaver, the ship, and the experience of being extracted from your homeland and going to a new land. And capoeira does bring that memory of the slave and keep it very alive. It's a beautiful song. And I now lost the arrow. Here it is. How do I go back to this? If you see the descriptions of the explorers, early as 1856, you know, the majority of the studies about capoeira are about the 19th century. They describe what we, sometimes they say it's capoeira, other times they don't mention capoeira, but we believe it's capoeira. And they're not nice, right? So James Wetherill, you know, says that throwing their arms and legs about like monkeys, right? This one, mentions like knives stain the game with blood, and it's true that during a period in the history of capoeira, the practitioners used a little knife. You know, that was because if the police came, you could defend yourself. But like everything that is Afro-Brazilian, it was a victim of prejudice for a long time. Also part of the myth, there is a capoeira movement, Camila, that's called benção. I'll let you kick this time. And it means blessing, but in the past, even nowadays in some countryside communities, people in a position of authority, they ask for the blessing of people who have money. You know, I remember being situations in which some mayors, they will give money and all the city will put a line, and that's like a sort of a inheritance of the slavery period. In capoeira, people say that the benção will be actually a response to that act of imposition of power. If you ask me to bend and be subservient to you, I'm going to respond with the benção. That's my blessing. Nowadays, it became kind of common for the master to do a benção in the mestre, and we avoid using the word master because of the connotations related to slavery. The mestre he does a benção to the student. You know, it became very common. It's like you should never let your guard down. Always pay attention. We say an eye in the fish, an eye in the cat, olho no peixe, olho no gato. But many masters also condemn that kind of behavior because it's aggressive and for some people goes against what capoeira is about. I'm going to skip that too. So in 1770, we begin to hear references to capoeira, the sport of fight. There is this guy, Major Miguel Nunes, who is a very important capoeirista. From 1809 to 1889, many, particularly in Rio de Janeiro, many struggles between the police and the capoeiras. So the capoeiristas used a nickname so that they couldn't be easily identified. In 1828, the capoeiras were called to protect Rio against German and Irish mercenaries. You know that if you see those reports, you know, there is this big association of capoeira and criminalization. So that was very common throughout the 19th century. The elites, of course, never liked capoeira. It's still true in Salvador in many ways. Some of my elementary school friends, I remember meeting this guy 2 years ago, and he said, "So you were into capoeira again? You know, this is coisa de preto, like stuff that black people do." You know, so it's sad. Of course, I'm no longer friends with that person, but the prejudice is a reality. It still exists, and particularly in Salvador, where this exists the longest. I've been in situations that I was hanging out with my capoeira buddies and all black and going to a concert and the police gets everybody, pushes them against the wall, and there I am standing, and then I say, "No, put me there too. They are my people." So it exists still, and it's very tough in Salvador. So again, all about prohibition. You could go to jail for practicing capoeira. The law prohibits capoeira. The Paraguay War, in one of the songs that we sang here, tried to sing, we're still working on our singing skills. was Paranauê, and it talks about the Paraguay War when Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina destroyed Paraguay, killed everybody basically, and many capoeiristas went. So the song says, vou-me embora, Paraná, mas não sei se vou voltar, Paraná, Paranauê. So it's like, I'm leaving, but I don't know if I'm coming back. So it's like acknowledging that I'm going to war, being promised to freedom when I return, but maybe the plan is that we will all get killed. So the song brings that reality. Nowadays there are two more famous styles of capoeira. Capoeira Angola, which is the one that I prefer, but not the most preferred in the world, which is a more, we call primitive capoeira, the first capoeira, original, the roots. And it's a lower, more philosophical, and the regional or contemporânea. Contemporânea is a middle one. Most groups are actually contemporânea. And these masters, Pastinha and Bimba, were instrumental in making those two styles grow. Still in the history, 1930s, other martial arts grew in Brazil. At the same time, African American music as well. Mestre Bimba, who creates Capoeira Regional, says, you know, Capoeira Angola, where you dance with the person, that's not a fight. I want to kick some butt, and I want to. So Mestre Bimba gets jiu-jitsu, judo, stuff from other fights and incorporates into Capoeira. Okay? But in 1930, Capoeira is removed, the ban on Capoeira is removed, and we start identifying the traditional Capoeira as Capoeira Angola. Okay, in 1932, the first school is found, and there were a lot of university college students and white college students for the first time in Capoeira. So that was taken with mixed feelings. When Mestre Bimba demonstrates for President Getúlio Vargas, Vargas uses this in his nationalistic discourse. He says Capoeira is the only genuinely Brazilian sport. You know, and Capoeira begins to be called national Brazilian fight. Just that for some people, after Vargas, Capoeira gets whitened. And for some people, that's a big problem. So some more of the history. The folkloric shows that happened were very important for the globalization of Capoeira. Not only because it took people from the Bahia to other places where Capoeira was not anymore prevalent, but also because it took capoeiristas abroad. And many times these people like me were not the best capoeiristas, but they were what they had, and many of them became actually later very good, because they ended up making a living, and really they were good business people, and they really could make the arts thrive in other lands. So this is Abadá, one of the biggest groups led by Mestre Camisa, and you can see the world, right? So the idea, and these masters, like Mestre Suassuna, who is the leader of the next one, that Cordão de Ouro, in which one of our students used to play, and I did too for many years. They have this idea that we want to take on the world. Mestre Suassuna, for example, when I was in Illinois, we would pay him $3,000 to visit us for a week. And then from Illinois, he would go to Madison, more $3,000. From Madison, he would go to California, more $3,000. So in a visit, I don't get $3,000 for a talk. Right? But he deserves it. He's done more for Capoeira than I have in my field. But it really changed the profile of the Capoeira, of some of the Capoeira leaders. Okay. I want to compare here Abadá and Gingamundo. Gingamundo was created by Mestre Sabiá, who used to be one of the leading members of Abadá. And when Sabiá created the Ginga Mundo, Ginga is the movement of Capoeira, he said, I don't want to be something oppressive like the Abadá. So he says, I'm going to put it crossing, that's a less oppressive kind of image. In KC, there are two groups, Capoeira Força Rara, in which some of our folks play, and Grupo Axé Capoeira, and they are both contemporary Capoeira style. Mestre Suassuna, in a very early song of his, he used to say that Capoeira for foreigners is like grass, and that was a very offensive thing. And then later, in another song, he says, I used to say that Capoeira for foreigners is grass. Now, this has changed. The foreigners, they do it all. They really dominate Capoeira. They are doing a great contribution for Capoeira. So the new song talks about Capoeira in Israel, Capoeira in other parts of the world, the Japanese playing Capoeira, and so on. In popular culture, I don't know how many of you have seen the Mazda commercial, and a very common Capoeira song that says zoom, 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 and it says zoom, 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 Capoeira mata zoom, and Mazda used that. The English version doesn't do so well, but the earlier version does so. Let me play it for you. I'll go to the next one. In film, Capoeira has appeared, these are just some examples, in Ocean's 12. Have you seen Ocean's 12? It's fighting.
No equipment, no rope.
Where's my help? No go anywhere.
How did you get by the laser field in the Great Hall?
Aha. The laser fields. Well,
So the actor is a damn good capoeirista. Of course, we who play capoeira, when a new film comes up and wait, that's capoeira. So the whole community immediately knows that. So I don't know if you noticed at the beginning there's something that sounds like a baby bow in all these films. Merci pour Luciano. It's gonna work. And I have played him probably 4 times. His father is a master. He's the first one. He's a master longo from Cordão de Ouro. So he does a couple of capoeira moves there. For us, that's good enough. Yeah, I won't show Catwoman. It's the same type of thing, you know. Held Berry, she had classes, and the other Catwoman also took capoeira classes. So it's always connected to danger, you know, of some form. There's always something that sounds like a berimbau. Many people have first heard of capoeira through this video game, Tekken. Eddie Gordo and Kristen Monteiro, they are capoeiristas. You know, so, that might work? Yes.
Round 1.
Phrase. A very interesting stories with breakdancing, the hip hop community. And I'll let the video talk about it. No. No. Too bad. So I have to go back. Sorry, guys. Can I go to YouTube?
This is Google Nest Hub, and that's a photo of aww.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Capoeira advocates point out that in the early 70s, a capoeira dance troupe headed by Master Gelao would often perform demonstrations on street corners in New York City. Others say that they are both African-influenced art forms that develop independently hundreds of miles away and 400 years apart. One thing is for certain, there are some very distinct similarities. Besides the movement,
so there are many advantages to the spread of capoeira. It helps to preserve it. Tourism in Brazil increases a lot, particularly in places where these groups are very strong. In Salvador, for example, I remember 3 years ago, the Secretary of Tourism of the city in a talk was saying that the average tourist spends 3 to 4 days in the city, and the capoeira tourist spends 3 to 4 months. So that's a very big. And we say beber água na fonte, to drink water from the well, from the source. And so the capoeiristas, as you reach a higher level, you go to Salvador. You have to go there. That's why I was learning Portuguese. It legitimizes capoeira as a true art form with cultural value, removes a negative stigma in many groups, the way you dress, the way you behave. In less privileged communities, they make sure that the children learn a foreign language, study, have good grades. Capoeira professionals are people now who live just by working with capoeira, right? And helps to spread Portuguese and Afro-Brazilian culture. It's believed that capoeira nowadays is one of the tools for the learning of Portuguese, one of the biggest ones. This is a song by Mestre Barrão. He talks about his life, and he was discriminated. People didn't like capoeira, but later capoeira allowed him to travel all over the world, and people respect him because they understand the value that capoeira has. But some of us find problems with capoeira, a threat to traditions, what we call fundamentos. So this is very important in capoeira. There is a lot of cultural simulacrum. You can see a Jewish guy stop and do this, before playing because he's seen it, or an evangelical do the Star of David or salute an orixá just because he saw somebody do it. And there is a religious and spiritual connection with the art. And now, because people see Brazilians or non-Brazilians who know what they're doing to it, they reproduce. And when that happens, it loses its meaning. And many people don't like that. I remember in Illinois once at a conference, a woman giving the Afro-Latin class, she came and said, let's salute the drummers, and people had to put their hands on the floor, and I, having a background in candomblé, I was like, why did you have them do that? And she said, oh, because I saw someone do it, and there is a connection, there is a reason why that's done. Some people think that there is a loss of racial and national identity, like not being associated anymore with the Afro-Brazilian community. For some people, that's a problem. But we stress a lot it's uma arte brasileira, Brazilian art. So it's Afro-Brazilian, meaning that it starts in Brazil with Africans, but the capoeira that exists in Africa was taken there by Brazilians. The commercialization, shirts, CDs, videos, people sell everything. And for some people, that's a problem. For you to change levels in some groups, you have to pay $500 here in the US. So, and sometimes people move up when they're not ready to move up. So many people question those elements. I have a friend, a Brazilian friend in New York, who had a capoeira fitness video. She's sold a lot. Some of us have a problem with that too. Mestre Vigilio, when I interviewed him in 2015, he said, in the past one would play capoeira for love. Now money speaks louder the berimbau sounded louder than now it is money that speaks louder. So he was obviously not very happy with what he's seen in capoeira. And I took this photo a couple of years ago, arriving in Salvador, and that's like for us a white guy, and I was like, oh my God, how did the people take that? And, it's at the airport, boom, the billboard, and you have a white guy representing capoeira. That was a phone company, and I did call them, and I got to talk to the market and said, well, most people who come to Salvador to do capoeira look like that. So that's why we don't have an Afro-Brazilian representing capoeira. But that led to lots of discussions and debates in Salvador. And it's not that there is prejudice against white people or foreigners who practice capoeira, but there is a concern about, we call in Portuguese local de fala, your place of speech. What's the word in English? Juan Pablo, positionality, right? So I'm not Afro-Brazilian, I'm indigenous, Tupinambá, I'm a mixture of Lebanese, all sorts of things, but I'm not Afro-Brazilian. So when I'm in capoeira in Brazil, I am very conscious of that. So when I talk, I know who I am, right? So this is important. I saw this guy from Finland, and he called himself adestrador, and I don't know what the translation means. Adestrador is like the guy who gets lions to be trainer, tamer. That's very complicated. So instead of teacher or master, he called himself adestrador. So I created such a turmoil when I saw that on his website. He was learning, so the masters talked to him. He changed it, the way he called himself. So nowadays capoeira is in 164 countries, all continents, practiced by men, women, children, young and old, and even disabled. This is a photo from Fular in the Rio favelas. And on the web and internet, you find lots of videos of these, people who are practicing capoeira. It has become a national symbol of Brazil, like soccer, like coffee, and so many others. And a question for some of us is, can we still take it as a mark of resistance, struggle, endurance, and survival? I've presented and promoted practicing capoeira here in churches, which is an interesting experience to schools and squares, all kinds. Capoeira, since the beginning, has had an audience, right? And so we're going to places where we wouldn't normally. What's the consequence of that? Okay. In my research, I'm interested in capoeira as performance, as ritual. I'm interested in the lyrics of capoeira, and I'm interested in documentaries written about capoeira that have been made about capoeira. Thank you. Questions?
Yes, does anyone have any questions? Luciano, that was really so interesting. Thanks, most of your answers are gone, but thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Just wish we could see more of the dancing. Well, okay, we've still got plenty of food. If people didn't get a chance to get snacks, please help yourselves. And thank you so much for
Anybody
coming.
wants to try?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Want to try? Want to try? Come. The Capoeira Club meets on Thursdays from 6 to 7 in Robinson Hall, where the dance department is. So you are all welcome to join. I think it's 250, but sometimes the room changes. 243. 243. 242.
So, can community come? Okay. Can community members come to Robinson and just say they're going to Capoeira and not show their faculty, staff, or student ID and get into Robinson?
Okay.
So usually the official answer is no, but usually if you say capoeira, they will not have a problem. Yes, exactly.
They always let me in.
Yeah. So it happens, but the club accepts people from the community. Because especially in the history of groups outside of Brazil, the people that end up really forming the group are the community, because it don't go anywhere else, right? Because the students graduate and leave, some, right?
Fair.
But the community, so we really very much want the community to participate, because that will give us foundation for continuity.
My question is about the music.
Yes.
Do you have specific songs that you, I was going to ask about the music. Do you have specific songs that you say we're going to do this one or that one, or is it more of an improvisational thing where one person starts and then everybody just follows after that?
Is this working? Yeah. Excellent question. So the music is another area in which some elements have been lost. The songs, they many times describe the game. Okay, and they give the communicator of the capoeirista, of the people playing, and the capoeiristas in the roda, in the circle. So there is a song that says, "Oh sim, 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 oh não, 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 oh sim, 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 oh não, não, no." So yes, yes, no, no. That song is supposed to go on when somebody is doing a bad job. So the message is, you stop, you go back, and you start again. Okay, so if you are like an experienced capoeirista with a group where the fundamentals, the roots are practiced, you do that. There are some songs, like there was one that people sing, "Lemba, lemba, lemba do baú vermelho, lemba, lemba, lemba do vermelho baú." And people sing lembra, like remember, but it's actually lemba. That's an inquince, an orixá, so that's a religious divinity. And you sing it to the orixá. So my master told me, you don't play if that song is being practiced in respect, because you're not at a certain level. But people not only play, but they also don't know what the song is about, and change the lyrics. Right, so the songs the best they would announce when the police were coming. They very much in some groups they help you know what's going on and how to behave in the roda. Just like the sound of the berimbau, it tells you when to start, it tells you when to end. But many groups now they just sing whatever, whenever, and not respecting, and many people don't know, and they. But particularly in Capoeira Angola, there is a lot of respect for the song and for what you do while when singing a specific song or not. So, for example, if I play, have you played capoeira? That's you, yeah, no. So if she takes one class and comes the second class and she plays with me, she's like kicking all over. You know, I can sing a song that's like, nunca vi bananeira cair. I've never seen a banana tree fall. You know, so the song is saying, why are you trying to cut this guy? This guy has done this since he was 7, and you in your second class. You know, so the same way, you know, it you say like, okay, you think you are a hawk, but you're actually a colibri, like a little bird. So the songs will tell you messages like stop, cool down. You know, don't don't think that this guy, because he is old and very heavy, that he's not that good, because, you know. So the songs will talk about those things. What you see is not what it is. And if you know the songs and the tradition, you understand the message, right? So I've seen this guy very heavy arrive, and maybe he's 60, and this kid from the US, Malandro, that's his nickname, African American, six-pack, you know, and he was like, ah. And the master started singing the song, and I said, okay, I didn't know the other players. Okay, there is something there. And the guy, you know, was a master too, and just played him like a child in the game, and it made him fall like 3 times. You know. So the songs have that role, but they're not respected anymore as they used to be.
I have another Luciano.
Yes.
I just remember about it. Maybe you know, and maybe you don't. But in the group of Angola, I practiced when I was in Bogota. They used to sing the songs using a theme. For example, they were singing about birds, and there were several songs about birds sung by each member, and they tried not to break the theme. For example, songs about water and traveling, they tried not to break the theme. Is there a reason for that?
I haven't seen that, but I think it's nice, right? And this is, so tradition is something that is questioned in capoeira. What is tradition? Something that's renewed all the time, right? So Mestre Bimba put elements from jiu-jitsu into capoeira. The berimbau was not an instrument for capoeira. So tradition is renewed, right? Mestre João Grande, that's probably now the most respected mestre, Afro-Brazilian, who lives in New York, speaking with Fed Abreu, late Fed Abreu, a historian from Salvador, he said, I don't sing any samba de roda, that's samba, that's very local from Bahia, in capoeira matches. And the discussion was that people were using lots of samba songs in capoeira. And he said, no, I don't use any samba de roda song, you know. And then the roda started, the Mestre João Grande leading the roda, he starts, Eu não sou daqui, marinheiro sol, the song we were talking, which is a samba de roda song. But he didn't know that it was a samba de roda song. So now we have a very nice dialogue between the scholars and the capoeiristas, and people like me whose identity is primarily a scholar, although I'm recognized in the capoeira community, and people like Mestre Cobra Mansa, who defended a PhD on capoeira maybe 2 months ago, but he is more respected as a capoeirista. So we have a lot of exchange, and many times I have been the person to speak for a mestre because I've researched, I've read all the books. The mestres hold the everyday knowledge, the practice, but certain things are not historically accurate. Certain oral history that is repeated, we know that that's not how they were, right? But tradition keeps reinventing itself. I've seen a viola, it's like a classical guitar, 7-string, recently, in the past 5 years, in many capoeira rodas. And this is something that used to happen 40 years ago, and it's back again. So tradition is not fixed. Tradition is something that keeps moving and changing. Juan Pablo is also part of our capoeira group.
I was curious to know about more about this kind of dancing style. In Ethiopia, Africa, there's a dancing style called kista. Kista, capoeira, they sound similar, but I can't say maybe they are similar. And the other similarity you see is when they dance that, they kneel down, they move their heads, and they do it when to mobilize people when there is war, and if they want everybody to be mobilized, so they play that kind of music, and then it's a dancing style. And there is a traditional instrument and music called masonko. It's similar to that one, but that's very small, you know. And I don't know if there is any similarity, just curious, you know.
Right, yeah, I hadn't heard of that, but as I said, we used to think that capoeira was the only, you know, but now we know that's not true also. And the diaspora and in Africa, there is a video that I filmed there sometime, show my students, in which the Mestre Kobe Mansa and two anthropologists and musicologists, they travel through Africa trying to identify the source of capoeira. So it takes them a long time to find manifestations that resemble capoeira, and they do. They find many of them. It's very beautiful to see them practicing with old masters. You know, an example is Laja from the Martinique. They use a tambor de crioulo, a drum, and they have a circle as well. And it's very, very, very similar. I saw in Salvador this beautiful moment in which capoeiristas were playing, old masters, with this Laja masters. It was very, very, very beautiful. So nowadays, because capoeira has spread, the Laja folks, they told me, we want to learn from capoeira because we want to get the same kind of visibility. Thank you for mentioning that.
So I'm curious about how essential the Portuguese language is in the practice of capoeira, because it seems like watching these people practicing it up here, they seem to have to be able to do the movements, they have to have some musical skill, they have to know the language too, and so as it spreads around the globe, is the language sort of spreading with it, and can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That's a very good question. I don't think, so there are people who are excellent capoeira practitioners and don't speak Portuguese, okay? There is, and I don't want to say a myth, but the origin, you know, origin politics, so being Brazilian, being Afro-Brazilian, sort of holds a special place for you in the capoeira community. But again, the community welcomes everyone. And learning Portuguese seems to be part of the ritual, the rite of passage that one needs to get to really be fully accepted. Because again, if you have like still the most famous masters are Brazilian. So you are at a bar after roda, and then everybody's speaking Portuguese and you. And you know, capoeira is a language in itself, right? So there are questions and answers. For every question, there is an answer, and or several answers. So you learn that language, but nowadays we talk not only about playing capoeira, but speaking capoeira, defending capoeira. So we require a lot more. The same way that the Brazilians, they learn the foreign languages because they have to go abroad, right? So Mestre Poncianium is in England, he speaks excellent English. In France, Mestre Chicote, I mean all over the world, and they learn the language. If you are gonna be interacting with the community, you're gonna have to go to Brazil at some point. And you know, there you're gonna need Portuguese. So it's more like, it's like we have what we call in scholarship the Brazilianists, like historians of Brazil, anthropologists, they all learn Portuguese because there is a level of, you know, interaction that at some point you will need the language. But not for the game, but the game is not the whole thing. It is part of it.
Okay, well, I think that's it. And thanks to all of you guys for coming. We'll have another one of these gallery lecture series events on November 12th. I hope you can come back for that, and thank you.
Thank you for the invitation, thank you for the questions and for coming.